She collapsed on the kitchen floor at 3 in the morning, her body finally giving up after 72 hours of no sleep. Her children were asleep upstairs, unaware that their mother was breaking apart in the dark. What she confessed to her psychologist 3 days later wasn't just about exhaustion. It was about a silent war she'd been fighting alone. A truth so raw that it exposed what millions of mothers hide behind closed doors. This is the story of a woman who gave everything until there was nothing left. And the moment she finally spoke the words she'd been too terrified to say out loud. If you've ever felt invisible in your own life, this will hit you harder than you expect. Sarah hadn't planned on falling. She'd made it through worse nights before. Nights when her youngest had colic and screamed until dawn. Nights when the bills piled up and sleep felt like a luxury she couldn't afford. But this night was different. This night, her body made the decision her mind had been refusing to make for weeks. She collapsed on the cold kitchen tiles at 3:17 in the morning, her phone still in her hand, the glow of her work emails lighting up her exhausted face. The house was silent, except for the hum of the refrigerator and her own shallow breathing. Upstairs, her 2 children slept peacefully, unaware that their mother was lying on the floor, staring at the ceiling, unable to move. She didn't cry. There were no tears left. She just lay there, her mind blank, her body heavy as concrete. Somewhere in the back of her consciousness, she registered that this wasn't normal, that she should get up, that she had to be awake in 3 hours to pack lunches and drive carpool and answer 50 more emails before noon. But her body wouldn't cooperate. It had finally reached its limit, and it was staging a rebellion she couldn't negotiate her way out of. The next morning, she told her kids she had the flu. They believed her because she looked sick, pale skin, dark circles, trembling hands. Her mother came over to help, which meant Sarah had to endure the familiar lecture about taking better care of herself, about not trying to do everything alone, about accepting help. Sarah nodded and smiled weakly, the same way she always did, while inside she felt the anger rising. Because what her mother didn't understand, what nobody seemed to understand, was that accepting help meant admitting she was failing. And Sarah had spent her entire life making sure she never failed at anything. By the 3rd day, her best friend noticed. They were on the phone, and Sarah's voice cracked mid-sentence when asked how she was doing. The friend didn't accept the usual "I'm fine" response. She pushed, gently but firmly, until Sarah finally admitted she hadn't slept properly in weeks. That she'd been having panic attacks in the bathroom at work. That she sometimes sat in her car in the driveway for 20 minutes after coming home, gathering the energy to walk inside and be mom again. Her friend said the words Sarah had been avoiding. "You need to talk to someone, a professional." Sarah resisted at first. Therapy felt like an admission of weakness, a public declaration that she couldn't handle her own life. But when she found herself standing in her daughter's doorway at 2 in the morning, watching her sleep and feeling absolutely nothing, no love, no warmth, just emptiness, she knew something was broken inside her. She made the appointment the next day, her hands shaking as she filled out the intake forms online. The earliest available slot was in 5 days. 5 days felt like an eternity. Dr. Martinez's office was nothing like she expected. No leather couch, no intimidating diplomas covering the walls. Just a comfortable room with soft lighting and two chairs facing each other. Dr. Martinez was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a calm presence that immediately made Sarah feel less defensive. She didn't start with the usual questions about childhood or family history. She simply asked, "What brought you here today?" Sarah opened her mouth to give the rehearsed answer, the one about stress and needing better coping strategies. But what came out instead was the truth. The raw, ugly truth she'd been hiding from everyone, including herself. She told Dr. Martinez about the kitchen floor, about the panic attacks, about the mornings when she had to force herself to get out of bed because every cell in her body wanted to disappear. About the shame she felt when other mothers talked about how fulfilling motherhood was, because she couldn't remember the last time she felt fulfilled by anything. About the growing resentment toward her children, which terrified her more than anything else. And then she said the words she'd never spoken out loud before, the confession that had been eating away at her for months. Sometimes I imagine what it would be like if I just left. If I got in my car one morning and drove away and never came back. Not because I don't love my kids, I do, more than anything. But because I don't know how to be their mother anymore. I don't know how to be anyone anymore. I'm so tired of pretending I have it all together when I'm falling apart. And the worst part is, I don't even know who I'm pretending for anymore. Everyone already thinks I'm doing a terrible job. My ex-husband tells the kids I'm too stressed. My mother thinks I'm not handling things well. My boss keeps giving me those concerned looks when I space out in meetings. So why am I still pretending? What am I even fighting for? The silence that followed felt enormous. Sarah waited for judgment, for Dr. Martinez to tell her she was a bad mother, that she needed to try harder, that other women managed just fine and she should too. But that's not what happened. Dr. Martinez leaned forward slightly, her expression serious but not unkind, and said something that cracked Sarah's carefully constructed armor wide open. When was the last time someone asked you what you needed and actually waited to hear the answer? Sarah's mind went blank. She couldn't remember. Not in recent months, not in recent years. Everyone asked how the kids were doing, how work was going, if she needed help with specific tasks, picking up groceries, driving to soccer practice. But no one had asked about her needs. Not the big ones. Not the ones that mattered. And more importantly, she realized she had stopped asking herself. She had become so focused on being everything for everyone else that she'd erased her own needs from the equation entirely. She'd become a machine designed to serve, to produce, to maintain. And machines don't have needs. They just break down when they're overused. Dr. Martinez continued, her voice steady and clear. What you're describing isn't weakness. It's burnout. Severe burnout. And it's not your fault. You've been running on empty for so long that your body shut down to protect you. That night on the kitchen floor, that was your body trying to save your life. Now we need to figure out how to save the rest of you. The parts that still believe you deserve to exist outside of being useful to other people. Sarah left that first session feeling raw and exposed, like she'd peeled off her own skin and couldn't figure out how to put it back on. Martinez had given her homework, not the kind she expected, but simple instructions that felt impossible. Sleep for 8 hours, even if it meant saying no to something. Eat a meal sitting down, without multitasking. Spend 15 minutes doing absolutely nothing. Sarah had laughed bitterly at that last one. 15 minutes of nothing felt more terrifying than another sleepless night. But she tried. That first night, she told her kids they were having cereal for dinner. Her daughter looked confused, her son delighted. Sarah expected guilt to swallow her whole, but instead she felt something unexpected, relief. They ate together at the table, and for the first time in weeks, Sarah actually tasted her food. Her daughter talked about a boy in her class who kept pulling her hair. Her son showed her a drawing he'd made of their family, with everyone smiling under a bright yellow sun. Sarah noticed he'd drawn her with closed eyes. When she asked him why, he said, "Because you always look tired, Mommy." The observation hit harder than any criticism from her ex-husband ever had. Over the following weeks, therapy became the 1 hour where Sarah didn't have to perform. Dr. Martinez helped her trace the roots of her burnout, not just to the divorce or single motherhood, but deeper, to beliefs she'd carried since childhood. The belief that her worth was measured by her productivity, that asking for help was admitting defeat, that good mothers sacrificed everything and never complained. These weren't conscious thoughts. They were the architecture of her entire identity, and they were destroying her. Dr. Martinez introduced her to other concepts: emotional labor, the mental load, the invisible work that mothers do that nobody sees or acknowledges. Sarah had never had language for these things before. She'd just assumed this was what being a mother meant, remembering everyone's schedules, anticipating needs before they arose, managing the emotional temperature of the entire household. But hearing it named, understanding that it was real work that depleted real energy, shifted something in her. She wasn't lazy or weak. She was exhausted from doing 3 full-time jobs simultaneously, while everyone around her saw only one. The hardest part was learning to set boundaries. Dr. Martinez had her practice saying no to her boss, to her mother, to the PTA president who kept asking her to volunteer. Each no felt like pulling a tooth. Sarah's entire identity had been built on being the person who said yes, who showed up, who never let anyone down. But Dr. Martinez asked her a question that changed everything. Who's there to catch you when you fall? Sarah couldn't answer because the truth was devastating. Nobody. She was holding everyone else up, but there was no net beneath her. She was one bad day away from another collapse. And next time, she might not get back up. She started small. She stopped responding to work emails after 8 p.m. She hired a teenager from down the street to play with her kids twice a week so she could take a bath without someone knocking on the door. She told her mother she appreciated the advice, but needed to handle things her own way. Each boundary felt like an act of rebellion, and each time she enforced one, she braced for catastrophe. But catastrophe didn't come. Her boss respected the email boundary. Her kids loved the babysitter. Her mother backed off, surprisingly. What did come was grief. As Sarah started to reclaim pieces of herself, she realized how much she'd lost. The woman who used to paint on Sunday mornings. The friend who laughed easily and stayed up late talking about dreams and possibilities. The person who had interests and opinions that had nothing to do with children or work. That woman had vanished so gradually that Sarah hadn't noticed her disappearing. And now, trying to find her again felt like searching for someone who might not exist anymore. Dr. Martinez normalized the grief. She explained that burnout doesn't just steal your energy, it steals your sense of self. And recovery means mourning what was lost while building something new. Sarah wouldn't go back to being who she was before kids, before the divorce, before the breakdown. But she could become someone different, someone who knew her limits, someone who understood that self-preservation wasn't selfish, it was essential. 6 months into therapy, Sarah had a moment that felt like proof she was healing. She was at a school event, surrounded by other mothers who all seemed to have everything together. Perfect hair, perfect kids, perfect smiles. In the past, she would have felt inadequate, would have gone home and spiraled into self-criticism. But this time, she looked at those mothers and wondered what they were hiding. What late-night collapses they'd experienced. What confessions they'd made to therapists or friends or empty rooms. And she felt something unexpected. Compassion. Not just for them, but for herself. She started talking more openly about her struggles, not in a performative way, but honestly. When another mother asked how she was doing, instead of saying, "Fine," Sarah said, "Honestly, it's been really hard." The response surprised her. The other mother's face softened, and she said, "Me too." They talked for 20 minutes in the school parking lot, sharing stories of panic attacks and sleepless nights, and the shame of not loving every moment of motherhood. By the end, Sarah felt less alone than she had in years, and she realized that her silence hadn't been protecting anyone. It had been isolating her. Dr. Martinez told her something in one of their sessions that Sarah wrote down and taped to her bathroom mirror. "You're not broken. The system is broken. A society that expects mothers to do everything with no support isn't a society that values mothers. It's a society that exploits them." Sarah read those words every morning, and every morning they felt a little more true. She wasn't failing at motherhood. She was surviving a structure designed to extract everything from her and give nothing back. The journey wasn't linear. There were still bad days. Days when the exhaustion returned, when the resentment bubbled up, when she fantasized about running away. But now she had tools. She knew how to recognize the warning signs. She knew to reach out before she hit bottom. And most importantly, she knew she wasn't alone. There were millions of mothers fighting the same silent war, carrying the same invisible burdens, hiding the same shameful thoughts. And the more they talked about it, the more the shame lost its power. Sarah still thinks about that night on the kitchen floor. But now, instead of seeing it as her lowest moment, she sees it as the beginning. The moment her body forced her to stop. The moment she finally admitted she couldn't keep going the way she had been. The moment everything had to change. She doesn't know what her life will look like in 5 years, or if she'll ever feel truly healed. But she knows one thing for certain. She will never again wait until she collapses to ask for help. And if sharing her story helps even one other mother feel less alone, then maybe all of it. The breakdown, the shame, the painful rebuilding was worth it.